There is something about Bonavista that gives you a sense of the past, a sense of tradition. There is something here that feels firmly rooted, set in its ways. Maybe it's the elegant old homes, freshly painted and proudly facing the sea. Or the neatly ordered inner harbor, known locally as the pond. The crowded rows of small boats of every size and description tell of a people long tied to the sea. Maybe it's the sprawling premises of the town's fish plant, a landmark here since it was built back in the 40s and operated by Joe Brothers. Even the longliners, relative newcomers to the Newfoundland fishery, have a touch of history about them in Bonavista. This was one of the harbors where longliners first started to appear more than 30 years ago. It all blends together, creating an atmosphere of the traditional, a feeling that here time is in no particular hurry, and things are slow to change. Yet for the past 3 years, Bonavista has been on the cutting edge of one of the biggest changes ever to hit the Newfoundland fishery. This unusual sight, ice cascading into a container on the fish plant wharf, is part of that change. The ice is being loaded onto a longliner for the next day's fishing. It will keep the day's catch firm and fresh until the boat returns to port. For the past 3 years, Bonavista has been the scene of a very important experiment. New methods, new regulations have been tried out, all aimed at one goal: improving the quality of Newfoundland fish. On this warm July night in Bonavista, it's just part of an experiment. But by the 1985 fishing season, it will be the law all over the province. The Calvin and Harve is one of a dozen boats in the Bonavista longliner fleet. She fishes the grounds about 25 miles off Cape Bonavista for cod, turbot, and flounder. When the quality control experiment began in Bonavista, a lot of people were watching the longliners. Many said they were a lost cause, that they couldn't get good fish out of the gill net, that the nets were left in the water too long, and the method of hauling the nets made bad fish worse. But the skipper of the Calvin and Harve, Rex Haley, disagrees.
It all depends on how often you are in your nets, and probably to dip the water, you've got a lot to do with it on a couple of deeper waters. You can always avoid squatting up too much on the roller, you know, you can always watch that. You got everything to your fingertip control, you can stop the girdle pretty quick so you won't squat and move it one way and let it go.
But you gotta admit though, sometimes you get some pretty messed up fish coming across.
Well, if you get a messed up one, the best way to do it is thrown away. Wouldn't pay to put it in the $9, especially if you're under quality control. One bad one could spoil a lot.
Getting the fish on board in good shape is only half the battle. The quality control program means that the fish must be handled in a certain way on deck. For Rex Haley, that's meant installing a special aluminum tank where a member of the crew bleeds and guts the fish shortly after it comes out of the water.
We pick it out of the net and lodge it in the bin, which is made fast to the tank, and the filler was got and stood up to the tank. You just pick it out there and cut the throats and take the gut out and just slide it in the hole of the tank, which is in 3 separate departments. We have one for turbot, one for cod, or one for flounder, eulachal, and all the one species you 4 to 3 tanks.
Bleeding and gutting at sea has forced Rex to hire an extra shearman. But although that's an added expense, he says it's worked out to be an advantage.
Well, we hire an extra man to make it a little easier on the crew, and when we're left to come in, we don't have any work to do, so it's worth a few extra dollars repaired to that man.
Now, someone who hears that because of the quality control you had to hire extra man might say, well, there you go, see, that's where you start losing money.
You lose the money, all right, but you get the help, so you can haul more nets and end up more fish.
Does it take much extra time?
Well, it takes a little extra time, a little extra work, but if you can get something out of it, I think it's worth it.
Well, what's the advantage of having that tank on board?
Well, you wash out most of the whole acid, so it comes out of the bait of the fish, out of the gut, and the fish bleed out better when it's in cool water. We keep cool water on a lot of the time. We usually keep it in for about 10 or 15 minutes.
So they're bled nice and white by the time they come out?
Well, that's as good as we can do it. I think that's about the handiest way we can do it, to handle a lot of fish. We've handled 20,000 pounds in a day, one day's fishing. When the tanks is, you got enough in it, you just lift the door up a little bit and drain it. You open your manhole and shoot it right down the hole.
As the fish goes into the hole, one of the crew puts it in plastic boxes, separating the cod from the flounder and turbot. The boxes and the antibacteria paint in the hold are all requirements under the quality control regulations. The bleed tank was supplied free by federal fisheries as an experiment. Otherwise, it would have cost Rex nearly $2,000. But Rex believes meeting quality standards won't cost fishermen a lot of money.
Well, it all depends on what shape your boat is in. If you've got a half-decent boat, a new boat, it wouldn't cost too much. You can't see what it costs any big money. It might cost $2,000 or $3,000, but that's not much money over the years.
For the longliners in Bonavista, quality control is a fact of life, and Rex Haley feels it's about time.
It's all right as long as you can sell bad fish, but what about the time comes when you can't sell bad fish? You've got to land good fish then, so you've got to land good fish for the sale. So
What do you mean when the time comes that you can't land bad fish?
well, you can't sell it. There's nowhere to land it. You can't sell it. The companies can't sell the bad fish. There's nowhere to land bad fish.
At the end of the day, when the catch is landed at the wharf in Bonavista, comes the reckoning. The long hours of hauling nets, bleeding, gutting, and icing the fish are over. Now it's time to take samples of the day's catch into the plant, where it will be inspected and graded. Plant workers who've been trained as graders inspect each sample. The fillets are examined and graded in a number of areas: color, smell, texture, and bruising. The grades go from A through B and C. If the fillet's in really bad shape, it's given a reject.
Grade A.
I spoke with grader Greg Dirtle about the system. You got a few samples here now running from grade A all the way down to reject. You want to just show us the difference between each type?
This here would be a grade A because it has no bruising and it's firm, it's resilient. It's nothing on the fillet whatsoever, right? It's a good fillet. Here we have a B fillet. The bruising is about 5 centimeters.
That's the bruise right along
Yeah,
there.
it's right there.
So it's only a minor bruise, so you don't
Right.
make it a grade C.
Yeah.
What do we got
This
here?
fillet there is a grade C because it has over 5 centimeters of bruising, and
So-
it goes down to a C grade.
So they'll lose that much of the fillet in the plant.
Right. Yeah. And here we have a reject. As you see, it's
Not much there, is
there's
there?
not much there. It's decomposed.
Well, what if he totally disagrees with you? If he says he doesn't like the grade that you've given, does he have any choice? Can he
Yeah,
appeal?
you can get it recalled again, Another grading done on it, and the second grading is final.
Do you have many run-ins like that, or things usually go pretty well?
Fishermen usually accept it, what grade they get now. I think we know how the grading sampling goes,
At first glance, everything seems to work well enough. If fishermen take care of their fish, they get top grades and top prices, and the plants get good fish to process. But there have been problems with the Bonavista program, serious problems. Ironically, they haven't occurred where most people expected them to, with the longliners. In Bonavista, the big quality troubles have come in the trap fishery. The trap grounds off Cape Bonavista. Now that it's late July, the season is winding down. The fish are starting to get scarce. 4,000 or 5,000 pounds is a good haul. In 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be time to take up the traps and go to hook and line and trawl. But right now, the trap fish are running, and the quality control program is very much in evidence. At every trap haul I'd seen before, all the fish would be dipped into the boat as soon as the trap was dried up. The cod would be sold round to the plant, or if it was gutted, that would be done on the way in, or at the wharf. But not here. Here the fish will be dipped aboard a few 100 pounds at a time. While the rest of the catch waited its turn in the trap, the cod aboard the boat would be gutted, put in the hold, and iced down. It seemed like a slow, time-consuming process, especially when you think about how much trap fishermen like to load and go when the fish are running. I wanted to know how fishermen in Bonavista felt about all these extra chores, so I spoke to Doug Whiffen.
I think there's a lot of trap fishermen who were a little bit worried about these regulations coming in. You know, they think there's going to be a lot of work involved, and there's going to be a lot of time and everything else, and they won't be able to make the big trap hauls that they're used to in June.
Well, they won't want to make no big trap hauls if they're going to get extra money on their fish. What's the reason for having big hauls of fish in, you know? If it makes probably as much money on a smaller haul. We'll have better fish, and the fish is going to be of better quality. It's going to be, it'll be better for the fishermen and better for the plants and better for the country, better for everyone.
A lot of Doug's enthusiasm for the quality program relates to money. Bonavista fishermen were getting up to 28 cents a pound for grade A large fish, 24 cents a pound for grade A small. On average, that's about 5 to 6 cents more per pound than fishermen were getting in the rest of the province.
To give away to the plants, you know, time for the fishermen to get something for that kind of fish. Look, see this? That's all. Look, hard fish. Look, fresh fish. Look.
Will you get good money for that fish now?
Well, we'll come out probably around 25 cents a pound.
Because of this quality project.
Because of the quality project.
So in a run of the season now, this quality project with the better prices, will that mean a lot of extra money for you?
Well, it's going to mean a fair amount of money above the old price. You can see that. So it's time for the fishermen to smarten up, and not to give away the fish for nothing.
Doug Whiffen does have a few quarrels with the quality program. For instance, the grading is sometimes a little too strict. But for the most part, he supports it. He takes the extra time and care, gutting at sea, icing his catch, and he's rewarded with premium prices. But as I mentioned earlier, trap fish has been at the center of one of the most serious disagreements over quality in the Bonavista program. The disagreement starts once the fish reaches the wharf. When Doug Whiffen and the other fishermen have unloaded their boats, they have to separate the codfish according to size. Anything over 24 inches is large and will bring the higher prices. The prices run from 28 cents a pound for grade A to 20 cents for grade B and 13 for C. The prices for small fish average about 3 to 4 cents lower on each grade. After the fish is culled by size and put into hand carts, it's taken to the weighmaster. There, the total catch is recorded, so much large and so much small. Then, samples are picked out and laid aside in boxes. The number of samples depends on how big the catch is. Inside the plant, the samples are filleted and graded. The grades are then applied to the entire catch. If 80% of the large sample fish are graded A, Doug will get top prices for 80% of the day's catch. It's as simple as that. Today, Doug's done even better.
Haven't got much to say today because of that I grade A. If another day when I was getting grade C, it would be different. And the B.
That's been the story for most of the trap fishermen in Bonavista. Consistent top grades for their fish. And this is where the problems start. The true test of any quality control program is in the final product. If the plant is getting top quality raw material from the fishermen, it should be producing top quality packs for the market. It should be, but according to plant management, it's not. The lake group says that while gillnet fish has been a pleasant surprise, trap fish has turned out to be a king-sized headache. The plant manager is Graham Room.
About 40% of our production is made up of gillnet fish, and I think that's the one that people look at that did cause the most problems, and it has improved dramatically. With trap fish, it comes down to the grading. The fish is landed at the wharf and it's graded, most of it's graded as grade A, but we found the next day when we processed trap fish that it's started to turn soft, and therefore we end up putting that in a second grade pack. And this means we're paying a grade A price for a fish which ends up in a grade B pack.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, according to what I'm told, they keep the fish too long. Trap fish was always good. They take boatload after boatload. And now they got to a point whereby this quality program is coming around. Seems like they're cooking up something else.
So you just don't believe that's true, do you?
No, I don't believe it's true. Seems like they still want to get the fish for money.
So you think they cut it right away instead of waiting, that they get better?
Well, I can't say about right away. Probably they have got to keep it a certain length of time, but we've been had trap fish brought in there up on the wharf, and it was pushed on the wharf and kept there for probably half a day.
Why isn't the fish that's brought in on a given morning processed that day? Why is it kept?
It's not always possible to process it that way, and we have problems with if we cut fish before or during rigor, it gives us a problem in some of our premium packs in that the texture is a little bit too tough for the customer.
What do you mean by rigor?
That's when a fish is landed and it goes into a state of rigor mortis. If a fish is cut in this state, the fillet has a rubbery texture, which does have some complaints from the American marketplace.
Room says there's another big problem to be overcome before quality control can be enforced throughout the province. That problem is ice. The Bonavista plant made close to 70 tons of ice a day, but could barely meet the needs of local fishermen. Room says if fishermen are going to be required to ice their fish at sea in 1985, something's got to happen fast.
I think ice is a big problem. Ice and the training the graders. I guess we can train the graders, but I don't think there's enough ice in Newfoundland. In Bonavista, as an example, we ran out of ice several times throughout the summer, and we had to go out of the program for a couple of weeks. There's a new facility going to be built there by the provincial government that should be on stream in '84. And this should look after our problems. But in a lot of the remote places, I can see it's going to cause, a lot of problems in that they're not going to have enough ice.
We had hoped that with the recommendations in the Task Force on Atlantic Fisheries, that where it was recommended there be an ice-making program provided by federal government, that would now have started. That's not yet happened. Hopefully it will in the next couple of months.
Surely you can't build enough ice-making facilities around Newfoundland to supply ice for all of the province by 1985.
For the main ports, it should not be that much of a problem. Looked at statistically, there's enough ice-making capacity in the province now to supply all the needs. The problem is that the capacity is not located in some cases where it's needed. So the main emphasis will be getting the shortage areas covered first.
There's another big obstacle on the road toward province-wide quality control in 1985. That obstacle is price. Fishermen feel if they are going to work longer and harder to meet the new standards, they should get paid for it. The last 3 years in Bonavista, they have been getting more money for quality fish. But that extra few cents a pound has been paid as a subsidy by the federal government. Ottawa is willing to continue the subsidy for the first 2 or 3 years of mandatory quality control. But eventually, the companies will have to pick up the tab. And the companies say they're in no financial shape to pay any more than they're paying now. They also don't buy the argument that they'll make up the extra costs through higher prices in the marketplace. The companies say there's no guarantee prices will jump if quality improves. And even if that does happen, it's likely to be several years before the plant sees some returns. The dispute over price has the federal people worried.
In Newfoundland terms, the price for the various grades has to be negotiated. And that is, of course, a crucial issue. The dockside grading will not work unless the price differentials are there, and they have to be negotiated. So that's perhaps the most serious impediment at the moment.
All of these issues must be looked at from one very important perspective. Mandatory quality control is scheduled to be in force all over the province for the 1985 fishing season. That's only a year away. In little more than 12 months, fishermen will be expected to change their boats and their habits. Huge amounts of ice will have to come from somewhere. Graders will have to be trained. And biggest of all, satisfactory prices will have to be agreed on. And while you're thinking about that, here's something else to consider. While our fishing industry struggles to bring in a system of quality control, our competitors, the Norwegians, the Icelanders, have had quality regulations since the 1920s. We can just barely see their dust. That's why, despite all the disagreements, everyone agrees we can no longer ignore the question of quality.
I think quality is the only answer to the industry right now. The marketplace is not going to expand. With the European currency devalued, there's going to be more imports from Europe. And quality is the only way that we're going to get a better return and in turn be able to pay fishermen a higher price for their fish.
Well, it's one of the factors that has to be involved in the rehabilitation of the industry. It's not the only one, but it is an important one. It may determine whether, in fact, we can sell fish, period.
Not much good to catch fish you can't sell. You have to have a market to sell. A lot of the plants is closed up now. So you would too many closed up. There'll be a lot of people out there working, a lot of fishing.
Well, quality is important to the Newfoundland fishery because they want quality fish on the market, and when you put quality fish on the market, well, you'll always have a fishery in Newfoundland. But the way it's been going this last, probably, 10 to 15 years, fish hasn't been graded properly, and bad quality in the markets. So you can see where we're going. Something got to change. And I'd say it's only starting to change now.
Not too late, is it?
Never too late.